Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm today's host, Coleman Hodges, and joining us, he is the new head coach of Kentucky swimming and diving. Today, we're sitting down with Bret Lundgaard. How's it going, Bret?
Great. Thanks for having me, Coleman.
Let's just right off the bat. This is not your first rodeo in the SEC, but now you are back in the SEC at the helm of Kentucky. What made this the right move for you, and what has it been like so far?
Yeah, it's I think for a move to happen, I think for me it always starts with the people and then the place. For the people, in going through a transition, you don't have a lot of free time. I haven't had a lot of free time, but I have had a little bit of time to reflect. And what I've recognized, the theme is that all the places I've been, it's just the people that made it fantastic. And then the second part is the place in terms of just opportunity. What type of environment is there? What's the ecosystem like? What's the ethos? What's the culture like? But the people part, the more that this opportunity became real for me, and I started to converse with those people, and I started to kind of get to know who my boss is and get to know just the culture here. Like with every conversation, I felt better and better and better and more excited about it. And so, it got to a point where like I really couldn't ignore it. Actually, I want to back up a little bit. I think when I was at Princeton, I think that was the joy of my experience there as well. Just the people. And, we got to a place where I had some fantastic bosses. I had wonderful support. I had people who, helped me grow as a leader and were patient with me and helped me, go through my screw ups early in my head coaching career. And we got to a place where I think we're really proud of that culture and the people that were a part of our program. And so I say that one out of gratitude for the people I work with, and most importantly, the student athletes there. I have a tremendous amount of love for them. But I also say that because it also illustrates like we wouldn't have just left for anything. And the people here and the place here and the opportunity and what it represents it was kind of hard to ignore. And from a place standpoint, as you alluded to, just being back in the SEC, I mean, the challenge is just it's very energizing for me. I think I'm whether it's good or bad, I think I'm one of those people that I probably get a little uncomfortable if I'm not uncomfortable. And I just love this idea of coming to a program that's had some great success. Like definitely has had some great success. And we've got some cool banners hanging above our pool. And I mean, just this week, Levi, congrats to Levi being announced, on the U.S. national team, the first male wildcat. I mean, how cool is that? And congrats to Jordan, his coach. But I also feel like those opportunities can become more prevalent. I feel like we can, most importantly, we can build a culture here where this is a destination for world-class swimming. And just to do that in the SEC with this wonderful balance of academics and athletics, I think this is a destination I couldn't ignore.
That's a lot. I failed to give our listeners a little more background. You were coming from being the head coach of the Princeton women's swimming and diving team, where you were the 2023 Ivy League Coach of the Year last year. I think you won 2 out of the last 3 Ivy League titles with the Princeton women. You've been a U.S. national team coach, and you've been there since the 2017-2018 season. And so it's, as you alluded to, and I actually read your letter that you wrote to Princeton when you accepted this job right before this podcast, and it was a very heartfelt letter, and it mirrored what you just said of you wouldn't have just left for anything. And
Yeah.
it sounds like you have a great opportunity here. So, right off the bat, you get to Kentucky, and then and then we report that you're holding open tryouts, which is not something you normally see at a Power Five college program, but something I thought was really interesting. And you're certainly shaking things up. Can you tell me a little bit about, you get there and then you make this decision, obviously, what went into that, and where was your head at for that?
Yeah, that probably got more attention than it probably deserved. Part of that is we, as an institution, we're working hard in terms of making sure that our numbers are in place in terms of the balance between men and women, and as an athletic department. And the other part with that is, there's and I think that there's so many exciting stories of this. There's so many good student athletes out there that just haven't been, given an opportunity, right? They just haven't been exposed to, wonderful coaches, wonderful teachers, and wonderful resources, to really kind of see how good they can be. And so we don't want to be naive about, or what I should say is we don't want to leave any stone unturned. And so there's, we want to kind of provide that opportunity early on in our time here. And, unfortunately no one took us up on it, but it's still, we want to kind of provide that opportunity for our entire team and make sure that we're exploring all options to get better.
It's or at least I've heard, at least one story that comes to mind of, someone who is swimming on a college club team, and then, he ends up making, I think he scored at NCAA's, a few years later. He was swimming at Cincinnati, and I think, but it's like that. Like you said, there are those diamonds in the rough that just don't have the right opportunity, didn't have the right support behind them, and I really, honestly, I enjoyed seeing that, because you do have, it's like those freakishly athletic people who are playing like rec league sports in college, and just maybe didn't have the drive, or like you said, have the coaches to get them to a Division 1 level, or in the right space to be able to compete at a high level, even if that may be something that they want to do. So
there's actually a pretty good story in this program about someone like that comes to mind. There was a young lady, she graduated. Her name is Parker Heron, and I think you all did a story on her. I want to say, like, she went from, I don't even know if she was like a sub-minute 100 backstroker. I don't want to misquote, but like, I think she ended up being low 50s, 51, 52, significant scorer when the team won SECs. And she, ironically, I met her. I did some lessons with her when I lived in Knoxville. And so I got to know her and her family, and they were awesome. And they were this story of, like, someone who's not, they don't have the resources. They're not with a club team that's, I think she had to drive really far, if I'm not mistaken. So she just didn't have the opportunities. And I remember they were asking, like, because you could see the girl could swim, she had a lot going for her and had a great head on her shoulders. And I remember her parents asking, like, what can we do? And I just remember telling her, like, you got to find a way to tell that story, show your personality, show your commitment, but also tell that story that, like, I haven't had the same opportunities as some of the people that you're recruiting against. And I fully acknowledge that I'm not where, you want my times to be. But if you, if you give me a shot, then, you're going to get the most of me. And I think, her dad wrote me actually when I got this job, and he wrote me a couple of years ago as well. And it's just stories like that happen all the time. I remember a breaststroker I was working with at Tennessee. I think he's a football player, he is a football player and just an athlete. And I think that there's so many stories like that. And as you see this sport evolve, and as you see, especially in a short pool, you're really seeing athletes. Like, we have some amazing athletes in our sport right now, and you see what they're doing. Like, we used to have, I feel like, as a sport, this reputation of like swimmers, like they're the ones who couldn't do anything on dry land, right? They're the ones who couldn't catch the ball or jump. And like, come watch NCAAs, right? Like, come spend some time with these athletes, because they are freaks. I mean, the things that they can do are just, they're outstanding. And so a lot of times you don't get that from having your stereotypical kind of swim background. A lot of these people, and I firmly believe every campus probably has some just tremendous athletes that would be phenomenal if they had the opportunity. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I did look that story up. Parker Heron, best hunter back out of high school, was 59.7, and she made the SCCA final in 2021 with a 53 low.
How cool is
So
that?
yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool. I didn't remember that, but
Yeah.
yeah, and you can find those stories, and like you said, you don't leave stones unturned because you want to find those athletes and you want to make those stories.
Right. Absolutely.
So so far, you've got your coaching staff, and now the team is the season has started. You're about a month in, I think. uh what has it been like so far, again, being with coaching men and women, I guess, first off, and then being in the SEC, which I'm guessing is just culturally a little different even in the day-to-day practices, than maybe the Ivy League was.
Being back with men and women has been a lot of fun. There's you know this because you've been to so many different programs. Like, there's a focus, and a little of this is stereotypical, but there's some truth to it. There's a focus that a women's team will bring, and like they do such a good job listening and staying attentive. And a lot of times on the men's side, there's an energy and sense of almost rambunctiousness a little bit that they bring. And what I've really loved is if you can create an environment where people can be their personalities, within the culture. I think that those two dynamics can really complement one another. And it's been really fun to be back on deck and kind of feel that, because it's been a while, and since I've coached men, I should say. And so been very grateful for that. I've also, when you go to a new team as a coach, and I know the student athletes feel this, right? Majority of our staff is new, and they're sitting there wondering like, oh my gosh, what's the coach going to be like? And well, the coach also goes through that too. It's like, what is this team going to be like? Like what are their personalities going to be? What kind of culture are we starting off with? And I mean, they couldn't have been more welcoming. They couldn't have been more receptive to us. And I really mean that. Like, just the other day, maybe a week ago, we were having a dinner, and I have 4 team members playing with my daughter. They're playing tag with my daughters for like an hour and a half. I'm like, it's just, and they were just doing that because that's who they are. And it just, moments like that, I know that our family, my wife, we're just so appreciative of. And they even gave us a care package, a Lexington survival guide, all the lists of the coffee shops, the tacos, all the best places for dinner, breakfast, so on and so forth. And so just the energy of being in this environment, being at a school where there is a very awesome, passionate pursuit of being the best student athlete you can be. I really have been energized by that. And then the second part is the staff part, what you alluded to. I think that actually has been, as I went through this hiring process, I started realizing that the staff part is going to be maybe my favorite pieces, because I have this opportunity. We have a full NCAA allotment of coaches. So we still are in the process of hiring another coach. And so we're really grateful for the support that our administration has given us to do that, to really facilitate an opportunity to build a world-class program. And what I started feeling and going through that process is like, these are phenomenal coaches. There's so many good coaches out there. And if you're going to be creating an environment where you can help each of your individuals, say you have 60 between the men and women, there's so much nuance there. There's so many different personalities. There's so many different backgrounds. And to be a part of a staff that has that kind of difference, the different personalities, they represent the different experiences. Like there's no day that we don't learn from one another. And there's no day where I go home and I'm like, oh geez, I'm pretty lucky. I got this staff. And that's pretty cool because it means that as a group, you're always going to be learning. You can almost guarantee there's no moment you're not going to be learning, whether it's from the student athletes or the coaches. And I think when you do it right and you have a staff that's really they're doing it for the right reasons, they're pros at what they do, I think that there's a level of energy that really helps kind of create a feeling on the deck. And I'm very grateful for our staff. I mean, and I'll kind of brag on them a little bit. Jordan is one of them that we retained, and Jordan is a rock star. He's probably our most organized and self-admittedly type A personality. Hopefully he can't hear me right now. And it's been so good for our staff though. And he's that like stereotypical kind of distance mind, right? Who like this, and that's very appropriate for us in terms of bringing balance. And he has done such a good job. If you look at the results in terms of the people he's worked with, and I mentioned Levi, who's recently named a national team member for the U.S. And Levi's just part of it. If you really kind of dive into it, he's had so much success with the men, especially that he's worked with, in kind of that upper range. The other part that I've really grown to appreciate about him is just his, he sincerely cares. He cares about the team. He cares about the culture. So we retained him. We're really fortunate to retain our two diving coaches as well. They're rock stars. I've known Ted for a while, and he is that perfect combination of like great coaching, even better character. And Kara's been fantastic as well, and she has some amazing experiences. And then we brought in Robin Bowie, who was with me at Tennessee. She was with me at Princeton. And then we brought her in here. And I think when I first became a head coach at Princeton, I always kind of knew that if I got that opportunity, I wanted to find somebody with that skill set that was different than mine, particularly on the dry side of things. She has this kind of Swiss Army knife resume where she's this former physiotherapist, massage therapist, has a great deal of experience in terms of weight, the strength and conditioning side of things. She knows the body, and she knows biometrics. She knows physiology. Like it's impressive. And so she is this kind of expert that allows us to, I think, connect and communicate with the team around the team here and make sure that no one has fallen through the cracks in terms of our student athletes. And it's really, I think, allowed us, and we're only a month in, but I can tell it's definitely allowing us to utilize the strengths of our support staff and making sure we're on the same page in kind of another level. And so that's been really fun to kind of be able to turn her loose and see her do that. She's also becoming a tremendous coach. So it's been really fun, the last 5 years at Princeton, seeing her grow as far as just her eye in the water. I mean, she's really good. So that's been cool. And then Caitlin Hamilton is one that we brought in. And I got to be honest, I didn't think we'd be able to find a head coach with her experience, in August, the year before, the Olympics. I mean, we had a lot of things kind of going against us. And I remember in my first minute, I knew I wanted to bring her on board, and she kind of reiterated what I valued, which is the people. She said, it's about the people. I want to make sure that I go to a program. She wanted a combined program, and she wanted to be surrounded with the right people. And it struck a chord with me. And the more that I talked to her, the more that I realized like we need to find a way to bring her on board. And she's just got tremendous experience as a phenomenal swimmer herself at Purdue. And then, was an assistant at a number of programs, including Indiana. And then I just love that there's another person on staff who was a former head coach, because I'm far from perfect and I'll make so many mistakes. And just to have somebody who has been there, has had to make some of those decisions. It's so cool to kind of have her expertise and her perspective to make sure that we're doing the best by our student athletes. And then last and certainly not least is Colin Ferris, who he's our Energizer bunny, man. This guy, he's coming from Louisville and he's still living there. So he drives an hour plus every day, and he comes in early in the morning, just, when Colin is here. And I love him. I just love the energy that he brings. And, he's got phenomenal experience. I really love his club background. I think it's somebody, I think a lot of times what I've seen and been a part of, like as college coaches, we're pretty naive about what it's like being a club coach. And I think he represents that background, even though he has coached college as well. And I think that's really important for us to keep that in mind when we're talking to student athletes, we're talking to prospects, and we're talking to club coaches. So he's great. And the other thing that I like about Colin is that he's a grad. So he's a Kentucky Wildcat through and through. I mean, he's got a tattoo of the state on his arm. It doesn't get more Kentucky than that. And I just love that, because this means everything to him, and I think for our student athletes to see that and feel that and realize that this is more than a 4-year experience, right? This is a lifetime in terms of your connections, your future family members. And I think Colin really represents that. And it's going to be fun as he helps us, connect with our alums and form these lifelong connections with our current team and also our past. So it's a really good group. Couldn't be more grateful for him, and we're excited to continue to fill it out.
Wow. Yeah.
That's probably more than you were looking for.
It was, and I love it. That's what we're here for. We're here to be long-winded. That's what our whole podcast is about. So I mean, I feel like I know the whole staff now, though, which is really cool. I kind of on that note, you mentioned the team coming together, mentioned the culture, you mentioned you talked about your staff. I'm always curious. You talked about the moment, or coming in of what is this team going to be like, the team being like, what is this coach going to be like?
Yeah.
How do you facilitate how do you get to know 60 athletes? It's like how obviously I'm guessing it's communication is a big part of it, but what form does that take? You mentioned a team dinner, obviously there's meetings, but can you take me through kind of that? I know you've been on campus for longer than a month, but the season's been a month so far. It's like, what are you prioritizing when you're trying to get to know your team?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. We prioritize getting to know them over everything. And actually, I've only been on campus a month now. This happened so late. I was scheduled to go represent Princeton and coach a few people at the tier meet out in Irvine prior to juniors, and then I was scheduled to stay out there and recruit. And then we had a planned family vacation that didn't exactly go through. So I actually transitioned from Princeton to Kentucky during my time out there, and they had to send me a box of shirts. And Greg at Stanford, he saw through it right away. I remember I was warming a kid up, and he comes up to me. He's like, "That shirt looks like it just came out of a box." And I was like, "Well, it did, Greg. You were spot on with that observation." And so it was kind of funny to be transitioning during that time. But the challenge is that we weren't on campus, and I knew from my experience, and my mistakes in the past, like I knew that it was so important for me to connect with this group. It's a group that's been through a lot, and anytime that there's change, it is really, really difficult. So I wanted to show them that we were very empathetic about that and very sincere about wanting to build those relationships. So I proceeded to spend my entire experience at juniors in a car in the parking lot doing Zooms with them. And then I would run out and go meet some recruits in the field. I can honestly tell you, in my whole time there, I didn't see a single race outside of the first night. And I was just going back and forth between Zoom calls with the team and then meeting prospects in the field out there in Irvine. And so I got through almost the entire team, I think, prior to then flying back to New Jersey. And then, we had to, my wife, my family have been amazing through this, and we had to get our house ready to sell. We weren't exactly thinking we'd be selling right now. So we had some work to do, and then kind of balancing that while continuing the virtual conversations. And then we did get here, I don't know, about four weeks ago. And I just sit here. I sit here and I meet with the team, and that's what I've done. And we're kind of going through almost round 2 now. I think we've met with everybody in person, and we're kind of well into our way of meeting with people multiple times. And I think that matters because each of them has a different story. Each of them has a different experience. And the way that we kind of view this working, like it is a partnership. The more that I know about them, the more that our staff knows about them, then we're going to be able to make decisions that put them in the right place at the right time. We're going to know kind of what makes them tick. We're going to let them, we're going to figure out the areas of growth. And I think most importantly, they're going to see that we care. And so we've really wanted to prioritize that. And I think we did. I think our staff has done a good job doing that. And that's also not going to be just a one-time thing. That's kind of how we roll. So it takes a lot of time, but I quickly see that in this role, that's going to be the most important thing I do.
Really insightful. And I appreciate that as a communication major in college. I appreciate that. Because that's I think it is important to get to know someone and to build those relationships. And I appreciate hearing that from, a D1 Power 5 head coach. I do have to ask though, how how do you recruit to a school that you haven't even set foot on when you're at juniors?
Man, you just sell the dream, I remember I've gone through this before, so I had a little bit of experience.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my first day at Princeton, we had a recruit there, and she's like, "Can you take me on a tour?" And I was like, I thought she was joking. And she was serious, and I was like, sure. I didn't want to say no. And so I'd take her on this tour, and I'm like, there's a building and there's that. And so talk about awkward moments. So like you kind of learn through that. But to be honest with you, is pretty easy for this, in the sense of definitely talking about the people and who we want to build this with, and the type of recruits that we want to bring on board. And we're in this really exciting phase for our program. Again, I alluded to, we've got some really nice history, but we're also in the building phase, which is awesome. And it's like, it's really challenging, and it's definitely not for everybody. This is one of those programs that has an opportunity to surprise your stereotypical swim schools, right? And like, that's not for everybody. A lot of people want, like, I want to go to X school. They've got all these banners hanging. Like, there's some safety to that. And I totally get that. And we're in this really cool spot. One of the things that also attracted me to this is, like, we're in this really cool spot where, it's been proven it can be done here. But we also don't really have a lot to lose. Like, there's a lot ahead of us. And so if you're somebody who wants to put your fingerprint on a program, if you're somebody who wants that responsibility, wants to be accountable for making a team better in your 4 years, like, you're going to have a lot of fun working with this staff. And that's just, it is what it is. And so that's kind of been the message, like, and fully acknowledge, like, that is not for everybody. But when we find those people and there's that connection, that's the best feeling in the world. And so that's the type of student athlete we're looking for. And that's how we're recruiting.
I'm curious as to how the day-to-day practice works, right? How are you dividing that as coaches? I've seen a lot of different college programs work a lot of different ways, and I'm always just fascinated by, the difference in systems there can be in terms of what coach is working with what group, or how it's divided up. So far, how have you done that? And again, your first time being a head coach at a combined program.
Yeah. Well, it was good for me to have the experience I did at Tennessee, where I think literally from my hire was the moment where Matt was transitioning from single gender to combined. So I had 5 years to kind of feel through, that experience and how we make decisions and personnel groups and coaches. And we did it, a number of different ways, which helped me feel confident, in this. I think in the past, it's been a little bit segregated here. And so I really felt excited and passionate about working with both the men and the women as the head coach. And so that's one of the areas I've prioritized. I also feel like with the expertise and the personalities we have on staff, like there's nobody in our program that's not going to benefit from having a little bit more exposure to different people. And so what we've tried to do is first start to understand our student athletes, what they respond well to, and that'll be a process that takes more than this year. But with every week that goes by, you get more and more information, and then you can kind of see like, oh, this is someone who really benefits from X, and we have that coach who does a tremendous job at X. And so what we're kind of working towards is everybody having somewhat of a point of contact on staff. So somebody, and I think that that's healthy. I think that that's safe. Like you have a coach that you're bouncing ideas off of, like they know your race strategies, they know your goals, so on and so forth. And there's probably at least 50% of the week you're with that person. And then for the other half, it maybe even a little less, there's supplemental opportunities that involve other coaches. And I think that helps create this feeling of one team. And I think in year one, I think it's critical that we do that. I'm definitely not interested in having 5 separate teams, inside of this one, and they're all, kind of almost even competing against one another. I think for this to be the experience that I know it can, we want to be one team. And I know that that's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but I think the way that you divide your week really influences that. So it's been fun to do that. And, they all, again, this was so late, they all made decisions in terms of their classes based on a previous schedule. So like there wasn't a lot I could change, to be honest with you. So I definitely anticipate the times, the days. I think all that will slightly evolve as time goes on and we get smarter about, given the right stimulus, given the right recovery. But our hands were somewhat tied in terms of what we could do this year, just with how late it was.
Yeah. And that definitely makes sense. So what do you have what is your group that you're with 50+% of the week? What type of athletes have you been working with so far?
So I feel really fortunate in my career. I've just had amazing mentors and people who've shown me a lot of different ways to do this. And I think they've kind of put me literally every spot I've been at. And then as a head coach with just one assistant in a single gender program, you kind of have to coach everybody as well. So like I've been in a position where I've been responsible for all groups. So I think that gives me a level of comfort just about anywhere. And so I felt like I wanted to be the last piece. And as we fill out our last spot as well, like I'm going to factor that in as well, but I wanted to be kind of the last piece to fill in the gaps in terms of making sure our assistants are comfortable and confident where, in their area. And naturally it kind of worked out where I'd be in the middle. And so I really like that because one, I like those events and I feel like I've had probably some more success with those events than some other ones, but it also allows me to go up and down. And so I have a very clear communication path to our assistant coaches, and I have a very clear communication path, whether it's up or down with our student athletes. So I think it's a healthy kind of middle ground right now for me.
Has there been any sort of, have you implemented anything of your own in this past month in terms of training? Like some teams will do dry land, for the first month. I just talked to Ohio State and they're doing 5 swims and 4 lifts per week, for in September. It's like, is there anything that you're doing on the physical side of things just to kind of kick the season off and get things rolling for your team?
Yeah. I think there's probably a number of things that I'm actually trying to be somewhat conservative in how much we change things up, right? Because I have to make sure that they're able to receive it, or else I'm just changing it to change it, and it's probably more about my ego than anything else. And I think I made that mistake in the past. And so I came here and I was like, how can I be true to what I view as the fundamentals of fast swimming? How can I be true to teaching? How can I be true to what we believe is the periodization, the physiological periodization throughout a year, while also making sure that I hear what they're used to and what they think they respond well to. And so I think we've probably sprinkled it in a little more than I have in the past. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a few people out there that our minds are blown right now. But I think the part that's probably very different is just in attention to detail and the way that we do everything. How we do everything is everything. And so we're asking a lot of them from a skill set standpoint. I love that we have this time to teach. There's a lot of them that they can work their butts off, and they're fantastic, and they have a work ethic that is probably unrivaled. And so I have to turn them loose and let them do that every now and then, while also letting them know that if you really want to be world class, there's a manner and there's a certain kind of skill set that is required at the level that we're talking. And so I think right now is a time to grow your habits. I think it's a time to really build efficiency mechanically and also in terms of what goes on internally. And that's where we've spent most of our time. And so it's been really fun kind of having some chalk talks and, breaking down how we see an event from a strategic standpoint. And then we reverse engineer that. And we talk about why a value of a skill set matters. And we try to show them what it means, towards the end, instead of just coming in and saying, hey, do this with your butterfly. And we don't really give an explanation why. So they've been asking great questions, very curious group. And it's been a lot of fun kind of in this chapter of teaching right now.
Sounds pretty fun. Sounds very intellectually stimulating.
Well, if you look at kind of the people I've been exposed to, it's the way I've learned it. And it's, yeah, just fortunate to be with some great minds in my past and kind of see this done a certain way. And, and then I have to also put my beliefs into it and put my personality into it as well. So it is fun. It's a lot of fun to have this opportunity right now.
So tell me about Lexington. I've been there once, and I honestly don't remember too much. Not to say it was a very quick trip, and that's why I think I was there for less than 24 hours. But I'm curious what you think of it, and where the best pancakes.
Oh man,
that's what I need to know.
Well, that's a great question, Coleman. I have to look at our team's Lexington survival guide for best pancakes. I'll text you and get back to you on that. It's funny that you said about Lexington. So this has got to be, excuse me, this has got to be one of the most eclectic places I've ever lived. Yeah, I don't know I don't know what I was expecting. I had been here one time when I was at Tennessee. We came up here and raced, but it was just kind of a day trip. This place has it all. Like, I didn't expect such a sorry, I need to sleep a little more. I didn't expect such a wide variety of everything. Like, if you want super liberal, we've got that. If you want super conservative, we've got that. If you want urban, we've got that. If you want suburban, we've got that. We have these, like, when you picture like these rolling, hills, these beautiful green grass where the horses are, like all those stereotypes that come into your mind. Yeah, that's Lexington. And you also have like this like very hip vibe as well. I don't know. It literally, I mean, maybe outside of Seattle, because that's probably tough to top. Like, it is one of the most like eclectic places I've ever been. And so I think part of that is this moment in time for this place. I think it's a place that's really booming. I think it's a place that's going to continue to grow. And it's also in this cool place geographically where it's like, I think they call it the doorstep to the south, and so it's this good blend. And to be honest with you, I really like that. I think that it's really healthy to have different perspectives. I'm kind of energized by that, and it's been really cool so far. So we're really fortunate. My daughter's she was in a dual immersion. My oldest is in a dual immersion program up in Princeton, half the day Spanish, half the day English. And like, we have that a mile away from our house. And so she's in that program. So you can feel kind of this cool community as well. And we're excited as a family to start to immerse ourselves into it. And again, it kind of goes back to the people. Like, the people have been really awesome so far.
That's cool to hear. I'm always, I mean, my shtick is pancakes, but I
Right.
always love coffee, and
Rightfully
I
so.
always and I always just love interesting food. Have there been any establishments that have stuck out to you that you've been to so far?
That's a good question. I've lived in this office probably a little bit more than I hope to in the coming months. We're about to transition to our fourth temporary house here in Lexington. We bought a home here. Real estate in central New Jersey is a little bit more cumbersome than most know, not because of how long it takes to sell a place, but there's lawyers involved and there's some unnecessary steps, if I say my opinion. And so we sold our house quite quickly, but the process has taken a long time. So we're very eager to move into our house. And once we do that, I think we're going to start to be able to branch out to some of these restaurants a little more and get a little more established. But maybe the silver lining with that is that we're a one car family. So I ride my bike to work every day. So we've lived all over Lexington already. So now, like, I've learned kind of a lot more about this place than I would have had we just moved into our house right away. So yeah, I'll get back to you on the good eats, because it's a slight passion of mine and my wife's as well.
That's exciting to hear. Riding your bike to work, do you have to get up pretty early to make morning practices for that?
Yeah, um, I love it. I love it. Like, that's my favorite time of the day because it's just quiet. It's just quiet. It's like the one time that I get to just, I don't know, it's like serenity now. I started that in Princeton, and our home that we're going to move into here is about a mile away from the pool. Like, so very grateful for that. Yeah, it's like
Good
super
walk.
convenient. Yeah, well, come on, let's not get crazy here, Coleman. So every place we've lived so far, our current place we're living is the furthest that we've lived away, and it's a 20-minute bike ride. And I go through downtown, and I don't know, I've really enjoyed it. I get up a little early, but it's not too bad.
Nice. Yeah, no, I hear you. It's when you get on that routine of kind of, well, I don't know if you're early to bed, but early to rise. Yeah, it's the mornings are so peaceful and quiet, and it's really nice to start your day like that. I agree.
I feel like that's like one of those, when you start to appreciate that, I think that's one of those indicators that, like, maybe I'm getting kind of old.
Yeah, maybe I'm aging.
Maybe I'm aging a little bit. Yep. Maybe I'm turning
Yeah.
into my parents a little bit. It's
Well,
okay. It's
there's
okay.
there's pros and cons. Yeah, it's all right. Well, Bret, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and chat. It's been great catching up and getting your perspective on this new chapter for you in Lexington. Any parting thoughts for our audience before we sign off today?
No, I mean, I do have a lot of gratitude for everything that you do for our sport, for programs. I mean, I really appreciate you giving us an opportunity to talk about our program, but just the sport itself, it's been fun to kind of see how this has grown. And I think a lot of it is just there's so many shared ways now, right? The parity is like sky high, and I think that there's something really beautiful about that, and I think it really forces healthy competition, and you got to be really good at what you do, and I think it's really important that we continue to work together to share these ideas. So you and SwimSwam have been a great catalyst for that, and an avenue of sharing those ideas. So there's definitely a sincere appreciation from it from a coaching standpoint.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.